So if we had time, I would love to go around the room and ask everybody, why are you here today? And what I'm sure of is we'd get quite a diverse opinion about why we're here today. But the one thing I can suggest to you is that each one of you is here for a different experience on a Sunday morning than you've been having all week, right? There's a reason that we come to a spiritual community for, well, there's an infinite number of reasons we come to a spiritual community, what we're looking for, what we get out of it. It's incredibly diverse. Can you guess what the topic is for today?
Diversity.
Diversity! The mothership submitted an outline called Diversity. And I looked at that and went, what about it? Unfortunately, centers for spiritual living tend to not be extremely diverse. A group will tend to look like itself. And my apologies to the youngsters in the crowd, but the rest of us tend to be, a certain age, and in my own case, even higher. But it's certainly not for lack of awareness, lack of receiving people. It's just a fact that you tend to kind of replicate who and what you are. The Center for Spiritual Living I went to in Vegas, that I got, practitioner through, was incredibly diverse. It was all the senior ministers were either African American or gay. And that's great. And that's who the congregation was. And it was wonderful. The diversity was exciting, empowering. So today we're going to cover diversity. You know me, we're not going to cover the outline quite like it's submitted by the mothership. And even so, the material I wrote, I told Susan this morning, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. She goes, well, you did all that talk. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not that in love with it. A few things I am. Have you ever heard me say this before? You, and you, and you, and you are completely unique. There's no one like you. Now, or before, or in the future. You're here now as a unique individual. Who you've been in the past, who you've been in the future, is different from who you are now. And that's a good thing. No one else on the planet has your DNA, your Akashic record, which we'll talk about later. Your fingerprints, your iris, it's completely different. And we have to learn to accept and embrace our unique, divine variety. So the topic was submitted by Reverend Karen Fry, co-spiritual director in CSL Dallas. Coincidentally, that's where Michael was singing that day. Pure coincidence, if there is such a thing. So the science of mind point of view is we are all originated and rooted in the one, which produces infinite variety. Yet we have so many ways that we identify ourselves, who we are, what we've become, what we'd like to be. Just in terms of diversity, we use things like gender, race, religion, appearance, physical limitations, sexual orientation, geographical, political, national, and we could keep going on and on and on. All these use labels that we apply to ourselves and others. So if that hasn't created enough sense of separation, we try to label everybody, everything in every way. That's our paradigm that we live with. And if you have one label in our culture, you're probably good. But what if you have multiple labels? Are you African American? Native American? We could use as many more hyphenated things as we are. Is there some judgment around those labels that we put on when we give somebody a hyphen? Seems to be. Now we even try to create one label to cover entire generations. Millennials. That's scary. Is it really? They come from the same source as the old folks. The baby boomers. Ooh, we have multiple labels. Here's what two truly great Americans had to say about that. In this country, we have no place for hyphenated Americans. Now, I could ask for guesses, and every one of you would probably not get this one. Teddy Roosevelt. Think how long ago that was. We have no room in this country for hyphenated Americans. Here's Eleanor Roosevelt. Pit race against race, religion against religion, prejudice against prejudice, divide and conquer. We must not let that happen here. 70 years ago, were Teddy and Eleanor prophetic? What are the forces that are trying to divide us through labels? Shouldn't we be embracing our God-given diversity? Who would want to divide us? Why would they want to divide us? I'm not sure. Don't know. But it's up to us to make sure that doesn't happen. Now, I could talk for an hour about facts of minorities' contributions. Here's just a few. The father of computer science was a gay man, Alan Turing. I never knew that till I was doing the research for this week. If you love your cell phone, and we all are addicted to cell phones, Jesse Eugene Russell, a black electrical engineer, invented it. And today, 2.7% of all the engineering faculty in the U.S. are African American. That's a tough statistic. 3.3% of all engineering undergrads last year, 2.2% of master's degrees, 1.5% of PhDs went to African Americans. You ever heard of an X-ray microscope? Invented by Albert Vincitio Baez, Mexican American. Ooh, he had a label. How did he invent anything? The first Latina in space, Dr. Ellen Ochoa, was an electrical engineer. Now we can go on. You guys know that. I often tell people I'm speaking to a master's class at Circle's Edge. And that's how it feels to sit up here and know each and every one of you, your spiritual path, your growth, your evolution, and go, ooh, I need to up my game because they're all masters already. But it's not your fault if you experience privilege in this lifetime. What is your fault is if you deny it. That you are privileged. You have benefited from privilege There's a YouTube video out about demonstrating privilege to young freshman college students. And it says, the winner, I'm gonna have a race, and the winner gets a $100 bill. Everybody lines up. Now, if you've never had to move because you couldn't pay rent, or if you've never had to move, yeah, but the whole process of questions. Your cell phone's never been repossessed, don't, take a step forward and all this. And by the time they start, all the white kids are in the front. All the minority kids are still standing exactly where they were. And then he begins the race. Well, obviously the white kids won, got the $100. He said, that's privilege, and you weren't aware of it. Just look up white privilege on YouTube, you'll see it. We all have biases. I was in class all day yesterday, and I had to explain my bias on the book that we were reading, which was Rick Warren's A Purpose-Driven Church. That revealed some extreme bias on my own part about that. And I'll make a website available if you'd like to take an implicit association test online. That way no one knows what you're doing. But it's a website where you can reveal your own biases. It's called Implicit, and it was performed at Harvard. But if anybody wants to take it, see me afterwards, we'll copy that for you. Within the last year, 29% of lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer students and faculty in the US experienced harassment and discrimination on campus. That's horrible. Those are bigger numbers than the Me Too movement, which is horrible. But that's our culture. That's what we've been living through. That's what we've been expressing. According to Maya Angelou, who we all love, it's time for parents to teach young people early on that in diversity there is beauty and there is strength. Now, I want to tell you about another YouTube video, and I originally thought I'd play it, but it's like 11 minutes. And anything that cuts into my ability to sit and talk is, not going to cut it. But two mothers are in the park playing with their young daughters. One white mother, one black mother. And the little white girl looks at the couple next to her and says, "Mommy, why are they black?" Have you seen it, Richard? No? And the mother was on the phone with someone, and she goes, "I'll call you back." Recognizing this is a learning opportunity. And she tells her daughter a story. That in the beginning, when Spirit created the planet, he wanted people. So he made people, and they were black people because they were beautiful. And he loved them. And the daughter went, "Oh, nice." And she kind of looked at the little girl next to her and smiled. Then she goes, "Mommy, why are we white?" And then that set Mom back again, and she thought about it. And she goes, "Well, God watched his beautiful little black girls and beautiful little black boys, and one of the little girls was playing with clay, which this little girl was. But in the story, she was playing with white clay. And she got white clay all over her. And God looked at that and said, that looks pretty good too. I'll make some white babies." And then he made white people for the black people to play with and to share the planet with. But darling, please remember that inside we're all black. And the black mother heard that, smiled, and the two little girls grabbed their hands and went skipping off to a very bright future. At least that's how I interpret it. I'm sure you can find that video just like, Mommy, why are we black or white, whatever. Of course, that's all consistent with our DNA, that we originated in Africa. In my Paradigms of Consciousness class, the professor wrote a book in which I found this quote: "If children are taught to see only black and white, that's what they'll see, even though they're fully capable of seeing a full spectrum of color." Now think about that. If you teach them that the world's black and white, they won't see color, or they'll learn to ignore it. And that learned blindness makes the road to adulthood full of obstacles. If children are raised to be hardy and are taught to value diversity completely, both the inner world and the outer world, they'll see rainbows, and they'll find an easier path to adulthood. That's from Christian De Quincey, a PhD professor that I'm studying right now. Here's another quote from Mahatma Gandhi. "Our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization." Now, of course, if you know me at all, you know I'm really big on relating to Earth Mother. Life itself is filled to the brim with diversity. No one really has any idea how many species there are on Earth. We don't even know how many planets there are like Earth in our own solar system, let alone how many solar systems there are. That's diversity. But let's just look at this planet for a while. We think of birds as a very well-studied group, species on the planet, and that 95% of the species of birds have been identified. Many people said, oh, there's between 9,000 and 10,000 species of birds. 20 years ago, between 9,000 and 10,000 species of birds. Today, 26,000 species of birds. Well, that was discovered in 2016, so today it might be more. Now, their work, these ornithologists study on hidden avian diversity. Birds that look similar to one another, but they're really different species. Now, before I leave this topic of species on Earth, how many human species exist on the planet? Are there any other animals? There's only one species on the planet?
Sasquatch.
You knew that was coming.
Bring him in, we'll study him. Here's what's bizarre. I knew someone would say Sasquatch. I knew it.
And you knew who?
I should have known who. We don't know if there's only one Sasquatch. We have the Pacific Northwest Sasquatch and the Tibetan Sasquatch.
Yeti.
Maybe.
Yeti.
I'm open to proof. But think about that. One species. We have heard from many other sources there used to be multiple species of humanids on Earth. We'll leave that for another day to explore why